welcome back or welcome to the Train Right podcast. Coach Adam here, your host as always. And today we've got probably the most decorated and accomplished riders we've ever had on the show, Coryn Rivera. She has over 17 or 17 17 in college. You have over 72 national championships to her name between road, track, mountain bike, and cyclocross. And she's a world champion. She's the winner of the 2017 Tour of Flanders, which no U.S. rider, man or woman, had ever done before. She's a vicious rider on the bike, great human being overall. And man, she can shred the gnar on the mountain bike. So, Corinne, it's an honor. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Today, we'll talk about the specifics of how you and your coach have navigated the pandemic challenges and how you've been preparing for the environmental conditions coming up in Tokyo. But first, let's learn more about you. First of all, like where are you coming from today? Where are you at?
I'm currently in Rennes, France. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but
I don't know either.
it's in like the Bretagne area, and we're kind of on the way to Brest, which is where stage one will start of the Tour de France. And we left the Netherlands this morning at about 7:30 and got here about 5. So had a long day in the bus and do the last couple hours tomorrow morning.
Yeah, make the push. That's a big drive for sure. And we were texting just
Very
before this. We were actually supposed to start a little sooner, but we had some we'll just call it rain delays. But so thank you for again taking the time to be with us.
for sure. Thanks for being
Uh,
flexible.
yeah, no, totally. So you mentioned the tour. Um, we have Tokyo coming up, but what is that next race that you have coming up? Women's tour.
So for this year, the women's Tour de France, also known as La Course nowadays, will just be one day on Saturday, and
Mhm.
we'll get going before the men finish. So we'll be in the morning. It's about 100K or so, and we do a big lap and then some smaller laps around like a famous climb here in Britannia that's about 3K long with an uphill finish. And then next year there should be like an 8-day women's Tour de France. So moving on up, pretty excited, and yeah,
Exactly.
looking to have a good race.
Cool. Cool. Well, good luck to you on that. And again, being at, the top of the world stage, for a number of years and also an Olympic selection for the U.S. I mean, you're there. But how did you get there? Like, where did this all start? Where do you call home and how did you start riding bikes?
So home for me is Orange County, California. Was born in like Garden Grove, but kind of grew up in Tustin. And then I was actually really into soccer when I was a lot younger. Played AYSO and then moved into club soccer. And then my dad was always on some set of wheels. When I was a baby, he raced motocross, and then he went into downhill mountain biking, and then got hurt, and then went into normal mountain biking and then got hurt and then finally kind of settled in on the road bike. And then he got a tandem with my mom right about the time when I was into soccer. And then I think got big enough where I could try being on the back of the tandem. Did like Palm Springs Century with my dad on the back, and I remember like falling asleep on his back like as a little 9-year-old doing a century. No big deal. Now that I think about it, that's actually pretty impressive. But back then I was like, yeah, whatever, just riding. But then eventually I grew big enough to kind of have my own bike. And then it was actually a mountain bike frame with drop bars and slick tires because I was so little, like we couldn't find a bike where I could just stand over. Um, so that was like our little setup. And then
For sure.
grew
How old
again
were
and
you when
actually
you
got
had
like
the?
a what's that?
Sorry, how old were you when you had the ghetto set up?
I had to be 9, I think, something like that,
Yeah.
9 or
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
And then yeah, eventually got like a 650 actual road bike. It was like a Cannondale,
Yeah.
and still have it to this day. It was just like a raw aluminum, and we like buffed it out and got it real shiny and turned it into like a single speed little townie. I can still fit it, so if that's any indication that I really haven't grown much, it's there. And then actually one of my dad's friends, so we used to like ride on the weekends, like a friends group ride, and then have coffee and bagels somewhere. And one of my dad's friends was like, "Hey, there's this kids race in Redlands. If you win, I'll give you $20." And I was like, "All right, cool. That sounds fun." And I've just always been really athletic and competitive, so I'm always up for a challenge. And went there, and my dad had just come back from the Tour de France, so he brought home like this Aqua Saponi kit, the Cipollini like zebra one.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like roll up to
Totally.
this kids race with like this decked out like zebra kit with like my little reading glasses because I wore glasses when I was a kid. And then yeah, crushed it. It was like one lap of the crit and took off at the start line, never looked back, and won by a bunch. And then did the same thing of riding with my dad and his friends on the weekends. And then that same race came back around. I guess it was 2004, and he was like, "Yeah, if you win that race again, I'll give you another $20." And I was like, "Sweet, let's do it again." And then like I had a trainer and we were prepared, and like I had a warm up and it was still one lap. And then I won it again, and then I was still excited, but I was also like, "All right, I can't wait every year for this one race." I was like, "There's got to be more. There's got to be something else out there." So that's where we found the racing license and the junior gears. Raced the next weekend at like LA Circuit. Raced against the boys, and I got second and cried because I think just a natural born winner and just hate losing. So was like in tears during junior gear rollout. And then the next weekend I beat the boys, and then the rest is honestly history. And then we go to
Yeah.
state championships and national championships, and taking me through college and everything. And
Did
yeah,
you
here
did
I
you
am.
keep wearing the same jersey?
I'd say for about a year I wore that kit until we like started getting more kit because I was riding so much.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
funny story. One time I was on my dad's wheel and I was like getting kind of cracked and kind of crossed wheels a little bit. And I don't know if he crashed me or I crashed myself, but crossed wheels, and I crashed on my zebra kit. And luckily, my little heart rate strap kind of like saved my chest. And there's like a little hole right under the
Oh
zipper.
no.
Yeah, I was totally fine, but I think that heart rate strap, like, and I just like kind of bowed out a little bit, but that heart rate strap kind of saved me. So there's a
Crazy.
little hole right in the front of that kit. I still have it.
Oh man, that is crazy. That's a funny story for sure. Saved by the heart rate strap.
Yeah.
Oh, well, in you're a Filipina American. Tell me, I mean, did everybody ride bikes in your family? Tell me more about like family, cousins, like the upbringing.
Yeah, honestly, biking was just between like my dad and I for the most part.
Yeah.
My dad is like crazy. I think he was always into stuff that most others wouldn't do. So like he
Hmm.
was really into motocross and stuff, and racing, and um, going off road and everything. So I think it was really within my immediate family, but really no one else in my family cycles. So it just really came between us.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, some of my family like try to ride, but really not to the level that I do. So
Yeah.
we I tried to take some of my cousins out for like an hour and a half, which is normally my hour and a half spin loop, and it took us like 3 hours. So
Yeah.
it was fun, but that's I think I'm on a we're looking at things differently.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I mean, just with I know your dad, your mom. I mean, it sounds like a very supportive um, community right away. Had plenty of opportunity from an early age, and started racing real young. Um, so, how old were you when you started just beating the boys at some of the more local races?
I was about 11 years old at that time.
About
Yeah.
11. Gotcha. And what was training like in between races when you were a junior? Was your dad just saying, go out and ride your bike and have fun, or were you doing like hardcore intervals, or like tell our listeners a little bit more of like what the junior development was like?
Yeah, I think starting out, it was mostly like those group rides on the weekends, going out for longer
Mm.
rides. And then once we got into racing and everything, my dad always takes everything next level, so he did like a lot of reading, and he was actually kind of like my first coach.
Hmm.
And yeah, we were doing some intervals and kind of basically, I mean, my dad's not really like a coach, but we kind of figured it out, and it was like, you know, what are the races and what are the goals, and then what are the demands of those races, and then how can we like kind of replicate and train that. So, you know, I used to do this road that was like kind of similar to like a nationals TT course, and
Hmm.
then I just go do that a few times, and then yeah, like a certain length of climb that at the similar gradient or something, and then do repeats of that. Once I was a little bit older, like 13, 14, 15, I got into track cycling. And so that put a little more structure in, and I was working with a guy named Tim Roach, who was really good with the juniors in the area back then. And we would go to the track Mondays and Wednesdays, something like that. And then I think it was like Thursdays and Fridays, or no, Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would go to GMR and go do like
Hmm.
hill repeats. And then Friday was like a rest day, and then we would like do races on the weekends. So that also like put a little structure into it. But I mean, we were all kind of just doing whatever until I was probably maybe 15, and I got like a little more serious coach. But that's just kind of how we prepared, and then it was always like training after school, so always in the afternoons, and then going out to the races on the weekends, and then over summer it was like a trip to national championships and stuff. So that was like my teen years, I guess, and then yeah, then as I got a bit older, then it became more serious and was more structured training and everything.
Yeah. What at what point were you like, I could do this as a professional athlete. I could do this around the world as my thing. Like what age was that starting to like come into your mind?
Probably 17, 18. I was thinking like, you know, when there's opportunities to go in Europe, and then also junior worlds, and
Yeah.
then you do some of the bigger races, because when you're 18, you can get into some UCI races while on junior gears, so it's like extra hard. But yeah, I think it was kind of an eye opener, like to go to Europe a few times and kind of see like what it could be. Um, and then also like when I was 15 and 16, it was just like a big dreamer. Like I loved watching the races, loved watching Tour de France, and thinking like, oh, how sick would it be to win on the Champs Elysees, like with all my other friends. Um, so like I always had it in my head, and I think yeah, when I set my mind to something, like I'm just gonna go all the way and won't stop. So that's just kind of in me to accomplish what I want. Um, so, but yeah, I'd say about 17 to 18 is when I really thought like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Got it. Yeah. And that was, I mean, you're kind of pioneering a little bit of, the women's field back then too, in terms of like doing that at such a young age as well. I mean, that wasn't really a
Yeah,
thing. I mean,
totally.
there were probably people watching those races doing those things, but not winning all the national championships and not like going for it like you did.
Yeah, totally. And when you think about it too, I think historically a lot of the successful US women kind of found the sport later in life,
Hmm.
like after college. And I've done this since I was 9. So this is really the
Yeah.
back of my hand kind of thing. Um, yeah, and I just love racing. Like when I'm racing, I'm kind of in my zone, in my element, and like I'm not scared of anything, and I just feel like that's where I belong. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Really unique. And just that the developmental age. I mean, my mind goes to Anders Ericsson's peak performance concept, and where this is where Malcolm Gladwell got the wrote about the 10,000 hour principle of becoming an expert in that field, right around 10,000 hours of experiential kind of performance. And for most of our U.S. women's riders, like you said, they kind of take to it later on in life. You had it way earlier, which is why, like at 18, not only could you have all the dreams, but you were actually there at the world stage doing what you're doing. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
That's pretty
totally.
cool. Um, So I know that, and you've mentioned this on podcasts and other articles too, but like 2011, I think it was, you were at
Hmm.
a big race, Tour of Qatar, and that kind of changed your trajectory from being kind of world tour bound to something else. Can you describe to our listeners what that was like?
Yeah, totally. So my last 2 years of high school, I switched to like a online program, and I
Mm,
could do everything remote. And I took classes over the summer, and I graduated a semester early, so I had the whole spring free. And that was in 2011. And my plan was just to race as much as I could in Europe and kind of get my feet wet and like really, yeah, figure out what are my next steps in the sport. And the year before in 2010, I medaled at Junior Worlds on the track and also on the road race. So had a pretty successful junior career, closed it out well, and then had some pretty good offers to go to a big team, but held off so that I could have kind of a year to grow. And in the end, kind of, I think glad that I did because the tore guitar right away, like in the beginning of the year. Had a really bad crash in the last stage in the sprint, and yeah, I was knocked out. Don't remember anything. I woke up in a CT scan with both my contacts out, and my bike was broken. And then I had to get like stitches on the top of my head, and had like some scarring on my upper lip and like close to my eye. So like pretty bad crash, and then I had to stay in Qatar for a couple extra days before I could fly home, which is a miserable flight home of 16 hours. Um, but yeah, it was
even
then
if
when
you're
I
not
thought,
banged up.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it was in that whole situation where I thought like, oh, maybe I should go to school. Like this could be over really fast. And yeah, I just yeah also thought that the dream could be over very quickly as well. So kind of preparing for that. So then I started looking at schools, and then Marion approached me about going to their program, and I thought it would be a good place for me to like continue racing and also get my education. So that was the route I took instead of going directly to which then was like the World Cup circuit.
Yeah, yeah. For our listeners who don't know Marian University, could you describe like that community there as it pertains to not only like scholastics but also bike racing?
Yeah, so Marian University is a smaller liberal arts school in Indianapolis, and they're NAIA for most of your typical ball sports and collegiate sports, but they also have a pretty good cycling program there. And down the street, we have a velodrome and a BMX track, and also like a cyclocross track around both of those um, both the track and the BMX track. So, and there's actually some pretty good road riding when you go south, and actually pretty decent mountain biking down in Brown County. So a little bit of everything there. Um, and yeah, I mean it's yeah one of the country's best cycling programs. So I'm a California girl, so it was a little bit hard to make that decision. But I actually have a sister that lived out in the suburbs there, so it actually turned out really great for me. And yeah, probably one of the more important times of my life, and also the more fun times of my life. So wouldn't
Hmm.
change a thing there. Really appreciate my time there in Indy.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they not only do they just pump out national champion after national champion, but it's like the community there and what they and they cultivate fun in doing it. And it's have coached a few riders that have come out of that program, and it's I mean nothing but awesomeness coming out of there for sure. Which is why I wanted to mention it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think they do a really good job about keeping it balanced and keeping it fun, but still, you know, doing your best in whatever it is that you do, and
Yeah.
supporting that.
Yeah, during that collegiate time, though, I mean, could you speak to some of the training that you were doing there, and did it change from where you were just before Qatar? Like, what did Marion kind of teach you in the training process?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Marion specifically, but more like my situation is like I tried to keep racing at a high level plus racing collegiate. you know, plus like figuring everything out on my own for the first time. So my freshman
Yeah.
year was like, I mean, I'm racing for Marion, I'm racing for the national team, I'm racing for my trade team, and just trying to keep all the plates spinning in the air. And eventually they fall. And yeah, I actually thought about quitting for a little while. So I stopped riding for like
Hmm.
8 months. And I was like, I think in my head, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to like London or something. And then it was all just happening. And I didn't realize like, why wasn't I going to London Olympics? And then everything just started falling down. And then there was just a day where I was like, why am I even riding? Like I didn't have a reason to ride.
Hmm.
So then I just stopped for a little while. And then it was good to have that break. But then of course, like I was on scholarship, and at some point, like, yeah, I was either going to get back to riding and keep my scholarship, or that was going to change. So it was like a little bit of motivation, and I was like, well, I'll try and get back in with the cyclocross season. It's fun. It's like a short season as well, so that's where I got back into it. My sophomore year it was,
Hmm.
and then it became like riding and training like with a purpose, like to enjoy it, because like to do it because that's what I wanted to do, not to do it because someone was telling me to do it. So I think that was probably like the biggest learning lesson out of that whole time period is yeah, like why do you do this? Like there I think should always be a reason to do it. And so I kind of learned that, and then I was getting back into writing. I was like, oh yeah, I actually really do like this stuff, and but I just have to remember why it is that I do it. So yeah, it was good to have a little break there, and yeah, luckily I fell back in love with writing.
Yeah, for sure. Has that why or that purpose has that changed since then, or is it found a
um
steady state?
I think it's just found a steady state. Like I just realized that I am really good at it. I do really love it, and I really do love racing and working hard and training and yeah, just being like the best version of myself. I think I really enjoy doing that, and just being prepared for an event. Like um, I don't know. There's something that I really like about doing that, being prepared for something. So but at the end, I just really love riding, like the places it takes me, and what it allows me to do, and the people I meet. I think it's a just a really cool thing.
Yeah, agreed. And I think anyone listening to this podcast, anybody who's ever done a competitive thing, when you're fit and you're equipped for the challenge at hand, I mean that's when flow happens, man. Like
Yeah,
that's the
it's
fun
pretty
factor.
sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So you're a sprinter, and or I should say this. Could you describe your riding style for our listeners? Because I call you a
Yeah.
sprinter and you're kind of ferocious at it, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of labels,
Yeah,
so most people call me
label
a
neutral
sprinter, but
here. Yep.
yeah, for me, I'm just a bike racer. I think if you put a finish line in front, I'm just gonna figure out what's best for me to get there first, or how I can beat everyone else to get there first. So yeah, typically I've won in a sprint fashion. It is kind of my strength, my sprint and my jump. But I think I am strong and light enough to get over some of the harder stages. I've won in breaks before as well, so um, I think I've like podiumed at prologues. So not to say I am definitely not a time trialist, but I can ride alone for a little while. Um, but no, yeah, you put a finish line in front of me, and I'll figure it out. I'm a bike racer.
Yeah, exactly. A gritty bike racer, and I think that if you put somebody gritty, in like that, whether it is a kind of a sprint or a high risk situation, you'll find that line. Um,
Hmm.
and then that's exactly what you do. And in order to like getting back to that preparation, what kind of like big training blocks do you find you need personally to like prepare you best for that kind of gritty situation to race? And I know that that's a kind of a loaded question because it's whether it's a stage race or a 1 day or climbing or whatever. But like, what kind of prepares you best for any race situation?
I think when I'm really trying to peak at a certain time of the year, I think altitude has been really responsive for me. Um, I've just kind of noticed in the past, and then for my last few years, I really didn't do much altitude, and it was just okay. But I found that
Hmm.
like my body can really handle that stress well and adapts and responds really well to that. And I normally come out the other end just rolling. So I do love a good altitude camp.
Gotcha. When you're up there, is it a bunch of climbing? Is it a bunch of like threshold work? Is it what's the intensity while you're up at altitude?
I think it kind of depends a little bit on what the goal is.
Mm,
But yeah, normally the first week or so is like pretty relaxed, and normally at some point I find where my balance is. I'll like get close to cracking and be like, okay, I need to don't bring it down a notch, and I think that's all part of the like kind of adapting phase of the first couple of weeks in altitude. And then after that, at least at this last block, I did a lot of 40/20s, a lot of 10 minutes, a
yeah,
couple 30 minute stuff, handful of 5 minute things. So kind of
yeah,
all over the place. But yeah, definitely more more intense efforts.
yeah. And was that all like in preparation for Tokyo, or was that primarily for coming into nationals, or um, what was that kind of like specific to? And we'll get into the specifics of Tokyo here in probably just a few minutes. But I know you had come off the altitude coming into Knoxville, but um, tell us a little bit more about the timing of that, if you can.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that I didn't have racing in May personally, so that left a
Yeah,
big window
yeah,
to do a nice altitude block. But yeah, definitely the Olympics and the Giro and La Course, like this whole period of racing is pretty important part of the season. And of course, we were gambling a little bit with making the games. So, but I think coming off of this altitude camp and then getting through Giro, I think would be a really kind of great two step going into Tokyo, um, with about like 2 weeks in between. So I think it was kind of like this whole period that we were kind of aiming for, but it all helps each other towards Tokyo. So and also
yeah.
did some heat prep at altitude camp as well. And Knoxville obviously also was really warm, so it all kind of flows together for Tokyo, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of my point that I want that I was kind of trying to titrate out a little bit is like when you're doing that altitude and when you're doing that preparation, you really need to do it before at a low risk situation before the athlete needs to prepare, right? Because you want the plasma volume expansion, you want the ride because you really can't go hard up there. Your intensity can't really exist up there without serious detriments. So, and I think
Right.
you probably did some um, hyperoxic training too when you're up at altitude. Probably had to get into a chamber and do some efforts at sea level. Am I correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And hopefully, yeah, you just want to do that before the athlete comes into that race preparation time period, and that was kind of my point in doing that. So, um, yeah, and I'd say coach has the process and definitely dialed in on that for sure as you head to
Yeah.
Tokyo.
Yeah, definitely. And then yeah, I had a good session in the O2 room and like had it as low as it could go. Not like a Tokyo specific, just to have a fully oxygenated session.
Hmm.
And it was just like, yeah, basically 5 by 5, so all out. And just kind of see where I'm at there. So that was a nice workout.
Yeah, yeah. We're kind of bouncing all over the place, but since we're on Tokyo and kind of swinging back there, um, has you mentioned London? Has the Olympic dream always been inside you?
Yeah, 100%. Even since
Yeah.
I was a kid, when I played soccer, like I wanted to make the U.S. women's team and everything, and would always watch the games on TV every summer. So yeah, it was a big thing for me.
So how did it feel when you got word of that here at the first part of June?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a great day. Also like kind of a funny day. I was in Boulder for my altitude camp, so I had planned on
Hmm.
riding with Ruth Winder.
Hmm.
And I rode down the hill from Netherland down into Boulder, and there's obviously no cell service there. I get a little lost finding where I was going to meet her, and I was a little bit late. So I rolled up to her and I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, I kind of got lost. Like, I thought, you live the other way." And then she was like, "You should call Jeff." And I was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Well, is it good news or what?" And she just kind of smiled at me, and I was like, "Dude, yes." And then I was like, "Wait, don't get too excited. I need to call him first." And then I looked at my phone. I
Right.
was like, "I don't have any missed calls from this guy. I don't have voicemail, anything." She was like, "Just call him." And I was like, "Okay, I'll call Jeff." And then called him back, and then yeah, he told me that I had made the team, and it was just a cool moment. A lot of emotions, and then also Ruth was there, and she obviously made the team as well. So
Yep.
we could enjoy the day together, and we were gonna go for a 4 hour ride. So yeah, it was just a cool moment, and for us to be together, and luckily we both made the team, so it wasn't an awkward ride.
Right.
And then we
Right.
kind of went into the day with a little extra motivation. And I had a bunch of efforts, and I think she only had endurance riding. So
Yeah.
what's funny about the day is that I was just crushing these efforts, like going, I had a little extra juice in me that day. But in between, Ruth was like kind of riding endurance, so like I wasn't really recovering fully between efforts.
Hmm.
And by the end, I had blown myself so hard. Like I started cramping and stuff, and she wanted to go all the way up Jamestown, and I was like, "Dude, I gotta go back. Like I
Yeah.
really messed up here." I was like, I wasn't really recovering between efforts, so we parted ways, and had a cracker of a day. Really, really went for
Yeah.
it, and but no, that was kind of the day as
Uh,
far as the announcement goes. So it was pretty funny.
that's a that's a cool story, and I mean, also the combination of like human emotion combined with altitude, right? It's like you're
Yeah.
riding that high, and it's like you just don't recover as well up there, right? It's
Right. Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and we're, like, talking so much, so then I wasn't eating as much, wasn't drinking as much, and it all caught up by the end,
yeah,
and then I just, like, hit a wall.
yeah, yeah. Gosh, but I mean, what an amazing journey, and that journey, for all of us, we've mentioned crashes, we've mentioned the pandemic, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you've had some significant challenges set before you, and coming off of COVID and all this kind of stuff. I mean, what has been like your biggest challenge or challenges during this whole Olympic pursuit, if you want to talk about them?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really just keeping focused. I think there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of certainty last year and for a long time. Yeah, like what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen? Are the games gonna happen? Like, was everything that I was preparing for even worth it? Are we gonna have races this year? Like, there was a lot going through my head, and I think everyone's head, just trying to sort everything out. And luckily, with time, there became more certainty. But yeah, but there was a period there for a while where I was like, well, I could just take a break, right? Like it would be cool if I just didn't have to ride, or like not sure why I'm riding, or I asked my coach like, is there like a hour goal at the end of the week, and then I can just kind of break it up how I'm feeling on the day.
Hmm.
Like if I feel like I just want to go smash 4 hours and take some QOMs, can I do that? Or can I just ride an hour because I just don't feel like riding and I'm not motivated? So try to do that for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I don't know if it was like self-induced or it was actually allergies, but I'm normally never home in April. I'm normally in Europe racing, and yeah, I just was coughing a lot outside. Did a COVID test. It wasn't COVID. Um, yeah, just waking up like really stuffy. And so I went and saw an allergist, and apparently I'm allergic to mold and dust mites. So cleaned up the whole place, got new sheets, mattress cover, everything. Tried some allergy meds, but it just made me really sleepy. So, but for a month there, I was kind of struggling with like how I was actually feeling in general. And then, yeah, on the
Mm-hmm.
bike when I was outside, I would just be coughing the whole time. I like had a hard time getting through 45 minutes. without coughing like my lungs out. So yeah, I just kind of took it easy and day by day until I felt like my body was like kind of figuring out what was going on. So pretty much gave myself a break there in like March and April.
Yeah.
But when I first came home, I was like rolling pretty well and took some QOMs before my body was just like, well, we're gonna take a break here. So,
Yeah.
but I'd say
Yeah.
that's like kind of the biggest hurdle. It was just like getting through the uncertainty, and I don't know if my body was like doing it to itself, but that whole thing. And then once like the calendar came out when I was going back to Europe, then it was like, okay, work backwards from that, and then we start training again and getting back into it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for a lot of people listening, I mean, when you're, you know, you make your money, you make the hay, you're riding that dream, and your body is that number one thing that makes it happen, and all of a sudden, you have, you know, breathing issues for an endurance athlete. That's a big deal. That plays
Yeah,
with you for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And from the creativity side of the coach, I mean, did you enjoy like having a little bit more autonomy during that like COVID time period to kind of control the training that you wanted to, or and how long did that last?
Yeah, I think for me, I really needed that. Like, I just kind of had to ride with my emotions really on how I was feeling on the day. I think my coach had a little bit hard time with it. Just to like how do we plan things? But for me, that's just what I needed. And there were some days where I just wanted to go smash some QOMs, and then some days where I was like, I'm just gonna do like 30 minutes and just call it good. So
Yeah,
I was like kind of all over the board when it came to how I felt about writing.
yeah.
But I felt like I just needed to go with that so that I wasn't fighting myself on what I really wanted to do.
Yeah, super healthy, super healthy, and clearly, I mean, it came out of that pretty good. The focus is there, going good now, and
Yeah.
here we go to Tokyo. So, um, you know, Tokyo is going to be one of the hottest Olympics projected, right? And it's humid there. So, between like you and your coach, what considerations and what have you done in training to prepare for that heat and humidity that's about to come here?
Yeah, so while I was at altitude camp, we did a handful of hot baths.
Hmm.
And then they're also normally after like kind of a harder day. So body's kind of already run and depleted. And then I would get into a tub full of water at about 104 degrees. And the goal was 40 minutes. Um, and he was like, oh, the goal is 40, but most come out at 30, and it's totally up to you. But yeah, I'm not a loser, so I just went the full 40 and then just made sure I didn't stand up right away and get dizzy and pass out. So,
I'm not a loser.
um,
I'm not a loser. I did 41 minutes.
yeah, I actually did. So it was funny because the last 10 minutes were more mental than it was physical. So I just played a
Yeah.
meditation so I could get myself through it. And it was I had 10 minutes left, so I played a 10-minute meditation. And then when it was done, I checked my timer, and it was like 40 minutes and 55 seconds. And I was like, oh man, I could have gotten out of here like 55 seconds ago. So I actually did do a minute over.
Yeah. Well, now you have a credit. It's been recorded. The world knows. So,
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. It's out there. But yeah, I did those hot baths, and yeah, so I did about 5 sessions of those, and I found those to be really helpful. And also, the training in Boulder was already pretty warm to begin with, so that was another layer of heat and stress for me and my body to try and get through.
yeah. And I mean, I'll ask the question. Feel free to say I don't know, but like, what was the end goal with the hot baths, especially post training? Like, what was the goal of response to your body, or psychologically, or something like that?
Yeah, I think the main goal is like to physically have my body in a similar stress as what Tokyo would be like.
Mm.
Yeah, just that hot, humid, and just as much stress as possible that I could handle. and also different forms. Like I was already at altitude, I already rode outside in the heat, and I'm gonna go hop in a hot bath. And my friends were like, "Are you sure this is okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing this. Like, I'm going all the way." So yeah, I think really just to push the limits and
Yeah,
also not go over. So kind of still being in touch with yourself, like, okay, like I just drained the water and I just sat there and just didn't stand up right away and just kind of slowly cooled down and was like really careful with how I was moving afterwards since I had to really stress myself so much. But I think also, yeah, the mental part of it is a big deal.
yeah,
I think that'll definitely come into play. Um, whether it's at Tokyo or next week at the Giro, which is typically also hot. So all these preparations kind of go hand in hand. And most of the people who are going to Tokyo are also doing the Giro as well. So it's
yeah,
just kind of part of the preparation process. But yeah, just doing just basically even like going back to how my dad used to coach me, like what are the goals and what are the demands of the event, and then to replicate that as best as possible beforehand so that your body is used to it when you get there.
yeah. And to that point, I mean, for our listeners, don't go out, do a 7-hour ride in the heat and then soft boil yourself here. This is not what we're advocating. But so this episode is in a series of the Tokyo lead up, and I just recorded with Christopher Blevins, who used a sauna protocol for some of his heat acclimatization. And you can do sauna, you can do hot water baths, you can go out and train in the heat, at not high intensities and all this kind of stuff, but that's just it. Heat is a stress. You want to expose your body to that stress so that mentally and physically you're prepared for the day. And then also in this series as well, Lindsay Golich talks about how long it takes, to get that done. And really, to your coach's side, and the rationale there is like, it takes at least 5 days of exposure before you start to really see those gains. And then obviously, since you were riding in the heat and then go beyond, you have some more exposure to that. The plasma volume keeps on going, right? And then you're training your body to just delay that core temperature escalation. So that's for our listeners. That's what's going on throughout this athlete prep side of things, and to do it at
Right.
altitude too. I mean, that's impressive. So
Yeah, it was some extra gains there, and obviously afterwards I went to Knoxville for U.S. Pro Nationals a little
yeah,
bit early and to try to really expose myself to real humidity. And we had a few days there before nationals that were just crazy hot. Even like an hour spin was just like, what is going on? Like you feel like you're swimming.
yeah,
And then also, I think the road race and the crit also were some pretty warmer days. But then again, it's like a bit of balance because you also want to be prepared for the event. So it was like a balance with exposure and also getting enough rest and keeping your body cool so that you're ready for nationals. So
yeah, exactly. And historically, I mean, how have your body responded to hot races, heat and humidity?
I think if I prepare well, I end up doing pretty good at it. I remember for tour or when World Championships was in Qatar in October, I did a
Hmm.
sauna protocol for that. And training in SoCal in October is fire season, so it's pretty much really hot, and
Yep.
then would hop in a sauna afterwards. So really similar situation. And then yeah, when I got there, it still is so extreme in Qatar. I feel like I could compare it to riding in front of a hair dryer. It's just so hot and dry. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I felt pretty okay at that event. Not my best result. One of my earlier pro world championships, but yeah, I felt like I did everything that I could to get ready for that kind of heat. And I think if I didn't, it'd be a bit more of a shock for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Now, did you have a test event over there, or was that sidelined for COVID?
We did not have a test event. I think there was
Okay.
one, but there was only a men's race or something, and maybe only USAC staff went, but I don't think any athletes went.
Gotcha. Okay. I was gonna ask you how that felt, how that went, and that kind of thing. But I know COVID waylaid a few things. But what's the Tokyo course like, and how stoked for it are you? I mean, does it kind of like suit your riding style, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so there's going to be a total of 2,400 meters in elevation. We're looking at
Mhm.
140K in total. I think 10K of that is neutral, and the first 60K is basically an average of 3%. But I think it's a lot of groups of like 5K sections that are just like going up, and then it kind of comes down a little bit going up. But the average of that section, and if you look at the profile, it just looks like it's going up for 60K.
Mhm.
Um, and then you get over the pass, and then you go kind of around this lake, and then there's another climb before you drop into the Fuji Speedway. And then you do a few laps, or not laps, but you do a few smaller laps around there, and then you finish on the speedway. So um, yeah, it's still, I believe, 40K to the speedway from uh, the top of that 60K. So it's still like a long time, whatever gets away on a long flat section. Yeah, and then a somewhat flat finish on the racetrack. So I think it doesn't play to anyone specifically. I think it makes it an open race, but definitely we'll have to survive for that first part, and to get to the end will be really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Sounds like you're the
And
perfect one for it.
yeah, yeah, and I'm super stoked. I think we have a really good team going
Yeah.
there. I mean, the Dutch are obviously really strong,
Yeah.
but and we're a bit of the underdogs. But I think we won't go down without a fight, and we'll make them work for it, or take it from
Exactly.
them.
I believe that for sure. I believe that for sure. So, most of our listeners are not preparing for Tokyo, but they have a lot of big races coming up themselves too. Now that the world's kind of getting back online. So, for those, doing Laruda or like Ironman Malaysia or something like this, hot, humid, epic things. Like, what's your advice for our listeners when they're prepping for an extreme environment like that?
I'd say to try and replicate it as best as possible, and because it is quite a shock to the system when you like get to such an extreme environment, and you're like, oh man, I feel like I'm in a jungle or something. But if there's a way that you could, yeah, do your homework, prepare, and realize like what your goal environment's going to be like, and then to try and replicate that and expose yourself to it beforehand, will give you a one up on everyone else. So I think basically it just comes down to preparation. How well can you prepare for your goal?
That's it. Yeah. And that specificity of stress, be it heat or altitude. I mean, that's, the more exposure time you can get to that, really, it is better, just like you've been doing throughout the past couple of years here. So,
Yep,
well,
exactly.
as we were kind of bringing home the home stretch here, I mean, it's, bike racing and all the stresses and this kind of thing, it needs balance too. And you've kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but to talk a little bit about not bike stuff,
Hmm.
and the whole traveling circus, that which it is. It's a bit of a grind. So, how do you unwind after a season or after an Olympic cycle or something like this? And what does your off season look like?
Well, it kind of changes year to year. But
Hmm.
after COVID and everything, my fiance and I thought like, oh, how cool would it be to have a sprinter van, and then we just build it out ourselves. So last October, once I got home, we looked at a few vans and picked one up, and just started to put some work into it. And yeah, when we left in May for my altitude camp, we drove out from California in the van and spent the whole 4 weeks in the van, with some plan B options. I had a heads up from my coach, like, hey, I don't know how the van's going to be, but, maybe look at some hotels or Airbnbs if it's not working for you, if your recovery is really bad. Um, but honestly, since October, and whenever I was home, we just put some work into the van, and I've learned that I'm pretty decent electrician and plumber, and Nate
Hmm,
is a pretty good woodworker. So some skills on the
that's cool.
side. We literally have done everything on our own, haven't had to hire anyone, and we have our bed lofted, and we have some overhead cabinets, and we have running water, and we have 400 watts of solar. We have a fridge and everything that we need, and we survived my altitude camp fairly comfortably, I'd say, and never thought about you know going to an Airbnb or anything. I think we had everything we needed, and yeah, everything was pretty comfy.
So, living the van life, what kind of comfort foods or comfort drinks do you guys whip up in the van when you're on the road like that? Then,
I think when it comes to comfort food, that's normally I always bring some stuff to Europe. Just random things that like remind me of home. Like if I'm like I don't know what to eat, or I'm just bored, or I'm feeling a little homesick. Like we'll have a random bag of goldfish and mac and cheese, like Kraft mac and cheese, some Cheez-Its, like really just like kid random stuff. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that just kind of reminds me of home, and it's just like easy to make, and it always tastes good. So can't complain.
Cheeses are some of my favorite too. Just a side secret on there.
Yeah,
are
Sour
are
Patch
those?
Kids, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And is that kind of like the same stuff that you crave, say, like in the off season too, or is that just, or is that year round comfort food?
That's definitely like a year-round thing.
Yeah,
Just if I don't know what to eat or something, just whip up some Quake mac and cheese or whatever.
yeah,
Or,
yeah,
yeah, and it's just like really easy, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not too picky when it comes to food. Like I'm not like a crazy health freak, and
yeah.
definitely don't like too many sweets. I err more on like the savory side. Like when I'm done with a race, like I would just love a bag of chips or something. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's just kind of what I gravitate towards too when it comes to
Yeah.
comfort food.
See, folks, you don't always have to be like laser sharp, dialed, nerdy thing to be a high performer.
No.
Proof's in the pudding, that one. Um, so finally, like, how do you keep it fun? I mean, you've won all the things, and we talked about kind of racing and training with a purpose. But how do you do that after so many years of racing at a high level?
Yeah, I think I just kind of switch it up a lot. Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning I do tend to shred every now and then on the mountain bike, so
Hmm.
like to get a little gnarly every now and then. And yeah, our mutual friend like Jason Blodgett and Nate as well, my fiance, I think
Yeah,
will
Nate can ride too.
yeah. So every now and then we'll Jason will come out and we'll go do some trails by us and just go rip around. And I think I'm an above average roadie doing above average mountain bike riding, technically. So that's also a nice way for me to like keep my skills up as well. So do a bit of mountain biking in the wintertime.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said on Blevins's podcast, it's not which bike, it's all the bikes. That's the
Yeah,
answer. Yeah.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, Corinne, we covered a lot today, and I've learned more about you as a person, as a rider, and now the world knows, how one of the best in the world actually does it on this stage like this. So, before you go, I mean, this kind of is probably going toward some of our younger listeners out there. But last question is, for those aspiring to for those big dreams or for that Olympic goal, whether they are young or they pick the bike up later in life. I mean, what would you say for those who's kind of dreaming big and wondering if they can actually do it or not?
Um, I'd say to just keep it fun. I mean, you have to enjoy it to put yourself through all the hard things and difficult things. So, if you're not having fun and you're making it difficult for yourself, I don't think you'll get very far. So, you have to find that you do love it, and there is a reason why you love it, and that you're enjoying it, and that's what helps get you through all the harder stuff too, and pushes you further.
Yes, indeed. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, Corinne, thank you so much again for being part of the Train Right podcast. Good luck at the upcoming races and good luck in Tokyo.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. Had a great time on the show and chatting away with you.
Cool. Thanks.